Shalom and welcome to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth Am, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles. This is a recording of Parenting Through the Parsha with Rabbi Matt Shapiro.
There's not much that a parent is supposed to formally do when their child reaches the age of Jewish adulthood. But there is a specific liturgical formulation that's traditionally recited in which the parent says essentially that I am now exempt from the punishments liable for this person. That once a kid has reached the age of Jewish maturity, any punishments that they might be liable for in a traditional system of rabbinic thought, the onus for that is no longer on the parent, but on the brand new adult. So we recited this last week when Jonah became a bar mitzvah. It was a beautiful Shabbat. It was really everything I could have hoped it would be, to see him shine and to be present with him and to get to celebrate with family and with friends. Memorable, to put it lightly. Life highlight does not seem like an overstatement. It was just a really remarkable experience all the way around. And within that remarkable experience is this turn of phrase that does not seem to really resonate with oftentimes how we think about it. That it's a transitional moment, it's a communal celebration, and there's also the sense that, yes, this is a person who's reaching a different moment in their lives in terms of their responsibility for their actions. And so it was then a nice wink to me that, what's this week's Parsha called? It's called Shoftim, Judges, and it's all about exercising judgment in different ways and different types of leaders and how that shows up. And the very, very beginning of the Parsha, right, that initial phrase where it talks about how that we should appoint judges for our communities. The Hasidic thinkers refract this, as they often do with many elements of our Torah, to think about it in terms of our internal experience. It's not only about what's our role in terms of setting up systems of law and courts, et cetera, but also about how we cultivate judgment internally. And one thinker who I read, the Noam Elimelech, he goes in a pretty stringent direction. He talks about how each one of us should have an internal rebuker. Basically that we should have someone looking over our shoulder. We should cultivate this internal sense of, oh, you're not doing that right. Oh, no, you should have done that better, etc. Now, I don't know about you, but I feel like I already have enough of that internally. I don't know that that's something I want to necessarily be developing more. And he goes on to say that this is because we should be pushing ourselves to be better. We should be holding ourselves to have a high standard, that it's a good thing to have that internal judgmental sense of how I am in the world. And that reads difficultly for me, that I want to hold myself to a high standard, but I sometimes have a tendency to be a little too critical of myself. I want to have a healthy calibration towards self-reflection, but I want to be exercising judgment without being judgmental. And that is something that I think is important to cultivate internally, both that self-reflective capability and also balancing that. And another Hasidic master, the Matt Shapiro, he starts his commentary on the Parsha a bit more evenly in terms of the tone on it, saying that a person should consider their ways in all their actions. That as we're living our lives, we should also be reflecting on what we're doing. We aren't just floating through the world, existing in the world. No, we're making conscious choices, and we should bring intentionality and reflection to our choices. And that's what setting up this sense of judges, this idea of, right, Shoftim with Shotrim, which is usually translated as magistrates and officials, but it's judges, right? That's a shofet is a judge. Shoter, interestingly, in modern Hebrew is a police officer, but that there should be appointees in the world and within ourselves for making sure that things are going to their highest standard, not in such a intense way that it's impossible to take that next move without even, being so self-critical that it's beyond our capability to make a good choice, but that we should be reflective. We should really think about how we're living our lives. I don't think it's a coincidence as well. It's, as the Parsha goes on, it also talks about how we can know what a true prophet is, which feels connected to me, that if we should be appointing good judges, we should also be thinking about oracles and prophets and seers. How do we know someone who's telling us what's going to happen in the future? How do we know if that's real or not? That's an interesting topic to explore. It also talks about kings, and the Torah is ambivalent on kings. And one of the things that the Torah tells us about what is expected of a king is that a king should have his own copy of the Torah that he reads. It's specific to him, and the king is reading that copy of the Torah. And that, to me, is beautiful conceptually. This idea that no one, no matter how elevated they are, is exempt from learning, is exempt from refining their judgment, that just as sort of a regular old person needs to be thinking about what they should do and shouldn't do, so too a king. Everyone needs to be engaging in that process. Everyone needs to be in the ongoing reflective work of living their lives, whether that is a 13-year-old, whether that is a parent, whether that is a king, whether that is a judge, whoever that is, everyone needs to be engaging in that process. It feels particularly Elul appropriate now that we are, yes, in the month leading up to the high holidays, which we take collectively as an opportunity for reflection, which we take individually as a time for reflection. What does it mean to be taking on that challenge this year? What does it mean as parents for us to be making sure that we are creating opportunities for our kids to be able to do the work of self-reflection in a modality that is both honest without being overly self-critical? How do we model doing that kind of work for our kids, that we can be self-reflective in ways that are honest and not overly self-critical? And that can be a fine line to walk sometimes. There's also the piece here in terms of the big picture that I think really what's being held out to us is the opportunity and the challenge of being present. In order to be self-reflective, I need to really notice, like the Me'ah Shiloach is teaching us, a person should consider their ways and all their actions. I need to see what I'm doing. I need to see the choices that I'm making, choices that I'm choosing to avoid. How am I present in my life? What's the way in which I'm showing up? Because the only way in which I can really think about the decisions I've made is if I'm aware enough to see what's really happening. And so now that we've been through this experience with Jonah, which again, I felt so blessed to be really present for, hopefully that's setting an example for him and something that I can aspire to as well, that I should always be that present, that I want to be that locked into the moment, because when I am, that's what then gives me the opportunity to self-reflect, to exercise that judgment, so that I can rise to the challenge of the Parsha, of being able to consider my ways, setting an example for my newly Jewishly adult child, and for myself as well, so that we can continue to learn and to grow together.
You have been listening to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth Am, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles. If you enjoy these podcasts, we invite you to write a review on the Apple Podcast site or wherever you get your podcasts. For more information about Temple Beth Am Los Angeles, go to tbala.org.